Man, I don't even know where to start. It all feels like a bad dream, even now, a year later. I guess I should rewind a bit. Me and my friends, we were the usual small-town crew. Tyler, Sarah, Emily, and me, Alex. We'd been thick as thieves since forever, always down for an adventure. So, when graduation rolled around, we knew we had to celebrate in style. A camping trip seemed perfect, a chance to escape the goodbyes and just be ourselves before real life hit. We found this little campground a few hours out of town, nestled beside a creek called Whispering Creek. The owner, a grizzled old dude named Earl, gave us a rundown of the place, all sunshine and smiles. But then, as the sun started to dip, his smile faltered a bit. "Now, you kids best stay away from the north end of the creek after dark," he mumbled, his voice a low growl. "That's where the whispers come from." We exchanged glances, the air thickening with a sudden chill. Earl cleared his throat, avoiding our eyes. "Just a local legend," he scoffed. "Campers spooking themselves with the wind in the trees." Great. Exactly what we needed. A ghost story to keep us on our toes. We set up camp by the southern bank of the creek, the water a gentle burble against the rocks. As twilight settled, we fired up the campfire, the flames crackling and casting dancing shadows on the trees. Sarah, bless her heart, decided it was story time. "All right," she declared, grabbing a stick to poke the fire. "Since Earl so helpfully planted the seed of terror, let's hear that Whispering Creek legend." Tyler, ever the skeptic, rolled his eyes. Probably some jilted lover who drowned himself or something. Emily, the resident horror movie buff, shivered theatrically. "Oh, come on, don't be a spoilsport. Let Alex tell it, he's good with this spooky stuff." I laughed, but a shiver ran down my spine nonetheless. All right, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "Here goes. So, the legend says." I launched into the story Earl had mumbled about. Apparently, years ago, a young couple came camping by the creek. The girl, supposedly heartbroken over a fight, wandered off into the woods one night and never returned. The boyfriend spent days searching, calling her name until his voice was raw. Finally, he found her shawl snagged on a branch by the north bank of the creek. But there was no girl, just an unsettling silence. The story goes that ever since, on certain nights, you can hear whispers coming from the woods near the north bank. Whispers that sound like a heartbroken woman, calling out for her lost love. The fire crackled, and for a moment, the only sound was the gentle rush of the creek. Then, just as I finished the story, a faint sound drifted through the air. A whisper. It was barely audible, but there it was, carried on the night breeze. We all froze, staring into the darkness beyond the firelight. The wind rustled the leaves, creating an eerie sighing sound. "Just the wind," Tyler finally muttered, his voice strained. But the doubt hung heavy in the air. For the rest of the night, we sat huddled around the fire, the cheerful mood replaced by an unsettling tension. Every rustle of leaves, every sigh of the wind, sent shivers down our spines. Sleep, when it finally came, was fitful and filled with strange dreams. The next morning, we packed up camp, the legend a distant memory, or so we thought. A few weeks later, back in town, a news report sent a jolt of terror through me. The body of a young woman had been found near Whispering Creek, snagged on a branch by the north bank, just like the story. The woman, Sarah, was from the next town over. She'd been reported missing a few days prior, last seen heading out for a solo camping trip. The official story was a tragic accident. She'd fallen and hit her head. But the details, the location, the timing, it all sent a cold dread through me. And then, I remembered the whispers. The faint, chilling whispers we'd heard that night by the campfire. Maybe it was the wind, maybe it was just a creepy coincidence. But to this day, whenever I hear the wind sigh through the trees at night, I can't help but think of Whispering Creek, and the whispers that turned into a blood-curdling scream. It wasn't the wind that night. It was something else entirely. The news report hadn't mentioned a scream. None of the neighbors or search parties reported hearing anything out of the ordinary. But Emily, bless her horror-obsessed soul, had this habit of recording everything on her phone, just in case, she'd say. The night we camped by Whispering Creek was no different. We hadn't thought much of it when we reviewed the footage the next day, the crackling fire and our nervous laughter the only soundtrack. But after Sarah's body was found, a chilling realization dawned on us. On the recording, nestled between jokes and the occasional snap of a twig, there it was. A faint whisper, barely audible at first, growing in intensity. It wasn't a woman's voice, not exactly. It was raspy, almost inhuman, filled with a raw, desperate emotion. Then, just as abruptly as it began, it cut off. Silence. Then, a blood-curdling scream that sent shivers down our spines even through the grainy phone recording. It wasn't Sarah's scream. It was a man's scream, filled with terror and pain. We listened to the recording on repeat, the hairs on our necks standing on end. The scream came from the direction of the North Bank, right where Sarah's body was found. Fear kept us from contacting the police. What could we say? We heard a creepy whisper on a recording. We were scared teenagers, not detectives. We convinced ourselves it was a prank, a cruel coincidence. But the truth gnawed at us, a dark secret that bound us together in a web of fear. A year has passed, and the official story remains an accident. Sarah's family mourns, oblivious to the horrifying truth that might lie hidden in the whispering woods by the creek. We moved on too, or at least tried to. We all went to different colleges, the tight bond we once shared fractured by the chilling events of that camping trip. The guilt gnawed at me for months. The image of Sarah's lifeless body, the knowledge of the scream, it was a constant weight on my chest. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I confided in Emily, needing to share the burden. To my surprise, she wasn't shocked. She'd been having the same nightmares, the same chilling feeling that something wasn't right with the official story. Together, we decided to go back to Whispering Creek. This time, not for a fun camping trip, but for answers. We reached out to Tyler, hesitant at first, but the shared fear eventually convinced him. We couldn't tell him everything, not yet, but we needed his help revisiting the scene. We arrived at the campground under a gray, overcast sky. The once familiar place now felt oppressive, the cheerful chatter of other campers a jarring contrast to the dread that coiled in my stomach. Earl, the old owner, was gone, replaced by a younger woman with a wary gaze. We managed to secure a campsite on the south bank again, a safe distance from the whispering north side, or so we thought. That night, huddled around the crackling fire, a nervous tension filled the air. We didn't tell ghost stories this time. We just sat in silence, the weight of our shared secret hanging heavy between us. As darkness fell, the wind picked up, whispering through the trees. A shiver ran down my spine. Was it? Suddenly, Emily gasped, pointing towards the north bank. Through the flickering firelight, I saw a faint wisp of movement in the dense woods. A figure, shrouded in shadow, emerged from the trees. It was tall and gaunt, its movements jerky and unnatural. "What is that?" Tyler whispered, his voice barely audible. The figure paused, its head tilting towards us. For a horrifying moment, I thought I saw a pair of glowing red eyes glinting through the darkness. Then, with an inhuman shriek that ripped through the night, the figure lunged towards the creek. Panic seized us. We scrambled to our feet, adrenaline surging through our veins. Without a word, we bolted towards our car, the chilling scream echoing behind us. We didn't stop running until we were safely inside the vehicle, hearts pounding in our chests. We sped away from the campground, leaving the fire to die down and the whispers to reclaim the night. None of us spoke during the drive back, the image of the horrifying figure etched into our minds. Back in town, the weight of that night settled even heavier on us. We knew we couldn't ignore it anymore. We had to find out what lurked in the shadows of Whispering Creek, for Sarah's sake, and maybe even for our own sanity. We started digging, researching local legends and folklore. We spoke to old-timers in dusty libraries and weathered diners, piecing together fragments of a forgotten story. The whispers, they said, belonged to a creature called a Wendigo. A malevolent spirit driven by insatiable hunger, said to roam the wilderness, luring unsuspecting victims to their doom. The legend sent chills down our spines. It explained the scream, the desperation in the whispers. But it also raised a terrifying question. Was the Wendigo responsible for Sarah's death, or was there something more sinister at play? We decided to return to Whispering Creek, this time prepared. We researched rituals and protective measures, a desperate attempt to face the unknown. The journey back was filled with a suffocating dread, the knowledge of what awaited us hanging heavy in the air. This time, we wouldn't be running away.